After e4, e5, knight c3, black can play d6. This move we haven't seen it at all throughout this series, but let's look at it now. It's not very good, obviously, because it's locking the bishop, the dark square bishop in, and it should, black should just get the bishop, the dark square bishop out, and then play d6. But it's a thing, and it can happen, and it's met with the usual f4. So after this move, let's look at this variation, which is pawn takes in f4, and now knight f3. Now here, the black player will have a few options, but this game is just a little bit worse, and it's obviously it's going to be a transposition. As soon as black develops the pieces, let's say bishop e7, and then the two knights out, you're just going to play the usual moves, d4, then the pawn will capture in f4, and you're going to be okay, and it's going to be a transposition from one of the positions we've seen before, and it's actually just black is just being passive. One of the moves that have to be seen, though, is g5 right now. This is possible because the black player doesn't have a knight in f6, which is usually the reason why black can't play g5. This is one of the variations where black plays g5. The pawn is protecting the pawn in f4, and black then will consolidate this pawn chain. Before that, let's see 1 second this variation, just very briefly. h6, this is the most annoying ever, because the idea is to play g5, and then this pawn chain kind of sticks forever. And I know if you're a King's Gambit player or a Vienna Gambit player, I know that this pawn chain is actually super annoying. How do you deal with that? This actually, you just play d4, you are targeting this pawn, and then when g5 comes, you will play g3. This is the very simple way in which you deal with that pawn chain. You're just going to take this pawn. It's going to happen. And if they take you, it's fine, because yeah, you're going to be down a pawn after you recapture. But this is exactly the point. Black has just been wasting a lot of pawn moves. It's got absolutely nothing developed. You're going to have the bishop, the queen coming soon, the rook will castle, attacking f7. Black is in huge trouble. Let's go back for a second, and let's actually see how to deal with that specifically. d6, f4. Okay, they take knight f3. And now, let's play g5. We'll deal with this with g3. Very simple. So remember, when black doesn't develop any knights to c6 or f6, but rather plays g5, and it's going for this usual g5 idea of protecting the pawn in f4 in order to retain the material advantage, just play g3, and you're going to challenge that pawn. And yes, you are going to be down in material, but it doesn't matter. Two things can happen now. Either g4 attacking the knight, or pawn takes in g3. If the pawn takes, so black is now up more material. However, you take back. And this is better for white, because now you're going to be playing d4, and you're going to have a lot of attack over g5. You're going to win it. h6 will never be possible, because the h pawn is pinned. You will be taking this rook. So h6 doesn't defend g5. So after this move, the funny thing is, let's say black plays f6. This immediately loses to knight takes pawn. And this knight is not going to get recaptured. So, and also you're going to be going to h5 no matter what. So let's say if they take, then check. King e7, obviously king to d7 runs into bishop to h3, so king will have to go to e7, d4, and you're threatening to go there to g5 with the bishop. There's no way to stop this. h6 again just doesn't defend anything, so you can see how our opponent does get pawn advantage, but look at what cost it comes. So let's take this from the start, and let's look at this once again. So pawn takes knight f3, and then g5, you play g3. Okay, what happens when they play g4, which is thematic, is the main move. Okay, knight h4 now, and the pawn in f4 now is no longer protected, so you're just going to play d4, and then the bishop will take this pawn. This is not going to be defended. Okay, so f3 by black is the best move. Okay, d4, and after bishop e7, double attack on this knight, ignore it, bishop e3. And now we've seen from one of the previous videos something similar. When the bishop takes the knight, you take back, and then queen takes back with check, but then you play bishop f2, the queen will go back, you have ideas knight d5, queen d2, you're completely developed. This is completely winning for white. So let's go now through this move now. Knight c6, normal development. Okay, queen to d2. And okay, in one of the previous videos, so after bishop takes in h4, which is the whole point, our opponent can retain these two pawns, but like, how do you dismantle this pawn chain that you as a Vienna Gambit player or King's Gambit player, you very much dislike, because it seems like these two pawns are going to be defending each other forever, but they're actually weaker than you think. So pawn takes, queen takes back, check, bishop f2 attacking the queen, the pawn cannot go down obviously, And in the previous video we went through, in one of the previous videos where this line was seen, the queen went to e7, and then we went on with long castle, bishop d7, knight d5, and then h3 to challenge this pawn, and that was it. In this video, let's go through queen h6, the attempt of swapping or the attempt of repetition. Fine, we accept it actually. Queen takes, knight takes. Now, if you notice, our opponent's got all the pawns, so he's up 2 pawns at the moment. But we have a much better position. Look at this knight is a loose piece. This king isn't castle anywhere. Although you may say, okay, there's no queens on the board, so why would you need to castle? Well, knight to d5. You're attacking c7, threatening to win material. Now, obviously, rook to b8 is stupid, because you just take here, and there's not like the knight is getting trapped. And it's a much better position for white. So after king to d8 now, which seems to be stopping us from going to c7. Okay, so let's make an example. Rook to b8, knight takes, check, king moves, and then knight to b5. You're attacking this pawn. So obviously that doesn't make any sense. So here, just a move ago, king to d8 instead of rook to b8. Bishop check. So this is now unstoppable. It cannot be blocked or anything. The king will have to go somewhere. So if the king goes back here, knight c7. If the king goes to d7, for instance, knight f6 ends the game, because now you're going to go on a dark diagonal, and then knight g4 then wins the pawn and the knight as well, because you're going to make a discover check. If instead the king goes to the light diagonal, then bishop c4 check is the best way to continue. When the king moves, you're going to be winning a piece, and it's going to be amazing, right? And you got all the threats of the world. If the king, let's make an example here, then knight g4 check, and you take it from there. Let's see one more example, but with another move. So d6, this is the d6 variation. Okay, f4, take, and now the early bishop e7. The idea is to target the square h4 and take our right to castle away. Okay, bishop c4 comes now. This is important because we need to be able to go to f1. Bishop check, king f1. Bishop g4, pinning the knight. This is a very annoying variation. d4. So in this position, obviously g5 here to maintain the control of the pawn in f4 doesn't work, because you're just going to play g3, and you know, now the bishop is blocked, it's trapped, so black will have to take this pawn. It looks like it's all good. There's nothing stopping us. However, you recapture, and now again the bishop is trapped. You might say, okay, what if the bishop just takes the pawn? Yeah, okay, but that is trapped next, because rook g1, and now where is he going to go? There are no squares to go except f4 and h5. But then we are making a skewer. Remember, we're attacking this bishop. So okay, okay, you might say, instead of the bishop moving away, what if bishop first takes us with an attack on the queen? Well, okay, take back, and now you're coming with a threat of checkmate. So this bishop is gone. But no, you might not be convinced yet, because bishop f4. Can the black player now save the bishop and the checkmate threat in f7? No, because you take. And when take back, e5 is the right move to capitalize on this game, because now you're threatening queen b7, trapping the rook. Well, not really trapping the rook, but the knight can move, but you're winning a crucial pawn. Our opponent will have nowhere safe to castle. And anyway, let's say black develops the knight, and you can play queen h5. This is the best move. You're threatening mate again, so queen to e7 seems to be saving everything. But now you take the pawn in d6 with an attack on the queen. Pawn takes back, rook to e1. So let's take this line from the start. d6, f4, take, knight f3, early bishop e7, bishop c4. Okay, check, king moves, bishop g4, pinning the knight, d4. So we mentioned that g5 is not a good idea. Knight c6, developing, bishop f4. And now usually the idea here is the black player with the knight is to take the pawn in d4 after taking our knight. So we have to develop the queen, and then the pawn in d4 becomes free. But that doesn't work. Now before we get there, let's see this line first with bishop to f6. Black, I've met this line before, and one of the reasons why I made this video is because I wanted to know how to best deal with this, because it's annoying how there's so much attack on d4, and the knight, which is the defender of d4, is not, it's pinned. So after that move, you play bishop to e3, putting more defense over that piece. And now bishop takes is met with queen takes. It doesn't lead anywhere, because take, and now the knight might take here, but then you take back. The bishop can't take back because it doesn't come with check, as it would usually do when you castle. Queen f7 is a threat, so that means this pawn cannot be taken, and then later you're free to play rook d1 or whatever. So the bishop taking you in f3 to remove the knight from defending that square d4 doesn't work. So here, what if black plays queen to e7 to put more defense over f7 and now really threatening to take in d4? Okay, queen to d2, that's fine. Castle, a4 is the best move. That's where the opponent king is. So we're going to go bishop f3, pawn takes back. Seems like this king is now very exposed, but it's actually very safe. h5 by black. a5. a6 is necessary now by black to stop a6. a6 would have been too strong. King to g2. Completely careless. Okay, h4. And now rook h to b1. We really don't care about this king being here, and looks like it's unsafe, but it's fine because black doesn't have any open file, and black has a bishop in front of the queen, which means the black can't really lead an attack against our king. Let's make an example. If rook to h5, okay, which is the best move according to the engine, king to h1, okay, and now it looks like the rook can take in a5, but that's not a problem because look, rook takes, knight takes back, knight to d5, comes with an attack on the queen, whilst the queen gives an attack on this knight. And in this position, if instead of rook a5, what if knight takes in a5? Okay, bishop f1, saving the bishop from the attack, knight back to c6, and now b4. We did lose that pawn, but it's good because it's for the opening of our file. So before b5 comes king to d7, let's look at this idea. The idea obviously is because we also have bishop h3 check. Bishop check, in fact, is the best move. King to e8, trying to give some freedom to some shelter to the black king. But now knight to d5 is the best move and the winning move, as you can tell. So that line didn't work. And one more thing, a few moves ago in this position, after we just played rook h to b1, what if black plays g5? Now this move looks like much more intuitive. It seems to be making sense. You go into g4 and then g3 or a take, open the files. The knight is coming, into the game, and then the rooks open the files against our own king. That makes perfect sense. But no, because knight to d5 immediately comes. It's attacking the queen and the bishop. So when the queen moves, b4 comes. This is our attack. b5 is unstoppable. After bishop to g7, saving the bishop, because if you don't save this bishop, you can't develop this knight. The knight is the only defender of that bishop. Bishop to g7, b5. Take back. The game plays itself. So let's take this from the start and look at something different. After e4, e5, knight c3, and bishop to c5. So we have explored this in the first videos of this saga. It's important because there's something we haven't seen. So after f4, d6 and knight f3, it now went through a lot of stuff in the past, but there's something we haven't seen at all. Like, for example, pawn taking in f4 now, which is very solid, or knight to f6, going for quick development, or knight to c6. Well, knight to c6 we did see. Knight to c6, let's look at this line briefly, because there's one I didn't show. So now here, as we remember, knight to a4 attacks the bishop, and bishop to b6 is the best move. And this is just a bad variation for black, because when you take, it's inevitable that you're going to swap the knight for the bishop. Bishop to b5 comes now. You don't need to take this bishop straight away. You pin this knight first because of the extra pressure on the square e5. We'll know what to deal when with black taking in f4 in a second. So knight f6 now developing. This is a line we have never seen. It's the most solid in such a faulty variation. d3 comes now to protect this pawn, and after castle, here you just make a loads of swaps. Knight takes, pawn takes, takes, and knight e5 wins the pawn. And there's no compensation. Queen to d4 seems to be making sense, but knight f3, very simple. And the queen will have to move back. You consolidated your pawn advantage. If instead queen goes to d6 instead of d4, knight to c4. And queen going to c5 to stop us from castling doesn't work because bishop e3 kicks the queen away. So you got a solid pawn advantage. So in this position, after we just took the pawn in e5, if black goes on with development, see if that pawn can lead to a compensation. Just move the knight back to f3, and that's it. There are no checks, no way to prevent us from castling. So that's going to be it. We're going to drop the line here, unless you want to look at this sacrifice, but it doesn't work. Just take the knight for free. It looks scary, but it's fine. Rook takes, check, king f2. There's absolutely nothing else. Black doesn't have enough development and pieces around to afford such attack. So let's go back and let's quickly explore something we haven't seen. So f4, d6, knight f3. Okay, two things we haven't seen. By the way, pawn takes f4 is just bad. You play d4, the bishop will have to move. And let's look at this line which we've never seen. Bishop moves, and now you're just recapturing f4. So there's absolutely no reason for black to play like that. Remember, the reason to take the pawn in f4 for black is if black can find a way to maintain the pawn advantage forever with g5, h6 or something like that. That's not the case. If bishop g4 playing the knight, just attack it straight away. We don't care that there's pressure on the pawn in d4. When takes, take back. You don't have to worry. You haven't lost this pawn in d4. I mean, yeah, you did, but you now castle. You got loads of development. The bishop will have to go back, let's say to b6. But you know, you're putting pressure on this pawn. This pawn is pinned. You can just play e5, and the game plays itself. There's a rook attacking this file. Position evaluated +2, +3, or something like that. Here, obviously, if the bishop takes our knight and tries to reduce the initiative like that, just take back. There's nothing. We also attacking the pawn in g7. So a move like queen to e7 doesn't help. Let's make an example. If queen e7 and bishop b5 check. You can't block with the pawn because bishop d6 comes with an attack on the queen, and the game will play itself at that point. You can't block with the knight because you got two pieces attacking the knight with the check, and then you win the rook. So you're going to have to play knight d7. But now queen takes in c7. Position evaluated +6. Also because you are going to infiltrate with the bishop. So let's leave it there. In this position, queen e7 doesn't work. What if queen f6 looking for a trade? Simply queen to c7. There's no compensation. Although it's a completely crazy line. This one has to be seen. Because after queen takes e7, queen can take our bishop with check. But we don't care. We play king to b1, and nothing stops us from recovering very quickly. Because right now we're trying to take the pawn in b7 and then win the rook. Queen takes pawn in e4 to protect b7 doesn't work because you can check with the bishop, and whatever black does to respond to the check, then any of the rooks on the bottom rank will pin the queen to the king. So you're winning loads of material. Black's best move now, according to this to the engine, is knight to d7, which stops the rook from being trapped. You can play rook to d8, but like, look, this king is on borrowed time. Here, what white needs to do straight away is rook to d6, because it puts more attack on the knight, and our opponent doesn't have any like back rank mate or anything. Knight to f6 puts more defense over this knight, but now rook to e6 check. Boom! How about that? White wins the queen.